Hi, I'm Nathaniel Myers, and I'm an associate teaching professor in the University Writing Program. Undoubtedly, one of the biggest concerns around generative AI as it relates to the classroom has been its impact on student writing and writing assignments. This is especially true with text-to-text systems like ChatGPT and Google Gemini. Initially, there was the fear that students might simply upload their assignment prompts and then generative AI would write the entire essay for them. But soon it became clear, as was the case in a May 2023 Chronicle of Higher Education article titled, "I'm a Student, You Have No Idea How Much We're Using ChatGPT," that you could use these tools for any and every step of the writing process. And so, whether it be concerns around academic integrity, the de-skilling of our students, or the offloading of cognitive work that is necessary for the kinds of learning that takes place during the writing process, generative AI's capacity both to create new text and to do so in a way that cannot be precisely replicated or even immediately detected presents new complications for instructors. Generative AI challenges us to reconsider not only the kinds of writing assignments we give students, but also the very learning goals that undergird them. Or, should I say, it invites us to reconsider these things. Because while many in higher ed are concerned, and rightfully so, about the potentially negative impacts of generative AI on student learning, others have begun to consider the potential affordances of these tools. Everything from helping to brainstorm topic ideas to assisting in research and generating counterclaims. It is this tension between the potential limitations of generative AI for the writing process and its potential affordances that will be the focus of this video. Our goal then will be the following: to offer some recommendations toward designing writing assignments that promote authentic learning and engagement from students, and in turn, disincentivize inappropriate or dishonest use of generative AI in the writing process. Then, to provide a few strategies for encouraging students to critically engage with generative AI as it relates to that process. To begin, I would like to offer 4 guiding principles around writing and writing assessment that are foundational to the disciplinary field of rhetoric and composition and that inform the recommendations herein. First, process is equally, if not more important than product. So that is to say, as one of the ways of knowing of Notre Dame's core curriculum, the process of writing has its own inherent intellectual value, a means of learning and growth that happens in the very development of the writing rather than in that finished product itself. Second, if this is true, then learning goals and assessment should, in turn, reflect the learning and growth that occurs during the process of writing equally to, if not more than, the elements of the finished product. How might you capture growth in your assessment methods? How might you design assignments for learning goals that recognize the value of the process of writing? Third, the strongest writing occurs when writers have a clear sense of their rhetorical situation, who they are writing to, what genre conventions define their writing, and perhaps most importantly, what is their purpose in writing? Transparency around these elements in any given writing assignment, along with its distinct learning goals, is key. Fourth and finally, friction during the writing process can be a good thing. Friction provides opportunities to clarify one's own thinking, to develop ideas, to synthesize, evaluate, and interrogate the claims of others. It is not a bug to be fixed, but a feature of the learning experience that is writing. As you reflect on the learning goals of your own writing assignments, you will want to consider what points of friction are important to retain for student learning before you consider where generative AI can be brought in to assist in that writing process. With those guiding principles in mind, here are some recommendations for writing assignment design informed by these very principles. And as a reminder, the primary objective in offering these recommendations is to support the creation of writing assignments that encourage authentic student learning and engagement, and in turn disincentivize improper or dishonest use of generative AI. There is no guarantee, however, that students won't use these tools regardless. But we can do our best to create assignments that invite their genuine interest and best efforts. To that end, the first recommendation is to encourage writing that values student voice and perspectives by allowing for choice, whether that be the choice of the topic, the argument, genre, style, or even the mode of writing. Perhaps you give students a range of potential topics to write about, or even better, can you provide multiple points of entry by asking students to write about an issue that they are already themselves interested in? For example, my colleagues in the writing program often assign op-eds for the Observer or community proposals in which students develop an argument for an issue related to their home or school communities. Or might you give students a choice between, say, writing a conventional paper or creating a podcast, such that regardless of the mode of composition, the assignment fulfills the learning goals that you have set? The second recommendation is to scaffold the writing assignment, and to do so around parts of the writing process, from brainstorming and pre-writing to revision and editing. Doing so can accomplish a few tasks for generating more authentic learning. So for example, it can give students deeper investment in their writing by creating multiple points of engagement. Moreover, it can allow you to structurally create more time with an assignment to help students avoid last-minute writing, which is just so often the point at which plagiarism is most appealing. No student, I believe, begins an assignment wanting to plagiarize. And finally, it gives you, as instructor, more opportunities to see and respond to their writing, which can, in turn, demonstrate your own authentic investment in their work, which is itself a motivator for their genuine engagement. Recommendation 3. Build in places for formative assessment. Doing so can, again, be a means to signal your own authentic investment in students' writing, but it can also create a space for growth. As we all know, writing is rarely a smooth, linear process. Mistakes happen, impasses arise, emotions, both positive and negative, present themselves. Creating spaces for growth can signal to students that writing need not be perfect, nay, can never be perfect, and that we learn and grow through iteration, and importantly, that they won't be penalized for mistakes that initially arise. A fear, of course, that may quickly lead them to turn to generative AI for more inappropriate ends. And finally, recommendation 4. When it comes time for summative assessment, consider ways of capturing and measuring those elements of process rather than product. Self-reflections, for example, can often present evidence of growth and skill and learning that is absent in the final paper. Moreover, they have the added benefit of occasioning deeper metacognitive learning for the student well beyond the assignment itself. They can also capture personal experiences of growth and learning that are just harder for generative AI to convincingly fake. Those, then, are ways you can encourage students to engage genuinely and meaningfully in the process of learning through their writing. But assignment design can also present an opportunity to reinforce in students how and why they should think critically about generative AI in the first place, and thus underscore even further the push for authentic engagement with the course learning goals. It can also be an opportunity to demonstrate the ways in which engaging with generative AI is itself a writerly act. To that end, here are some strategies for encouraging students to reflect critically on their use of generative AI. First, there is value in reminding students that when engaging with text-to-text systems like ChatGPT or Claude, they are engaging in a rhetorical act like any other. In fact, while much has been written on the importance of prompt engineering, creating those clear, specific prompts to generate more useful responses from generative AI tools, best practices around prompting reinforce the same kinds of contextualization that we want to encourage our students to consider when they embark on any writing assignment. Within the framework of your own assignment's rhetorical situation, it can also be an especially good idea to consider genre and genre conventions. Some genres of writing are admittedly more formulaic than others, or at least they follow certain conventions of writing more strictly. Things like business reports, some legal writing, even grant proposals. Generative AI tends to be stronger at producing these kinds of writing, not least because its datasets can draw from many, many examples of them. So consider what genres you're asking students to write in. Are there some that, because of their conventional nature, are more or less useful in achieving the learning goals for your course? Or might you consider an assignment that asks students to evaluate generic conventions in a text generated by, say, Claude or Google Gemini? Again, any opportunity to invite students to reflect on the output of generative AI can encourage a more critical examination of what it has to offer. This is the case, too, with AI-generated feedback on student writing. Increasingly, studies are reflecting on the potential value of AI-generated feedback, not least for the ways it might potentially provide personalized opportunities for learning and growth. So students can ask ChatGPT to focus on a specific concern in their writing, or they can even ask it to adopt certain kinds of personas and attitudes, like to be gentle and kind, or unsparing and harsh, in ways that might be helpful to them. Importantly, however, AI-generated feedback also tends to be overly generic and doesn't always accurately reflect the issues that it has been tasked with evaluating. While more specific prompting can be helpful to students in those instances, there is also emerging data that in situations where further prompting is necessary, it is students who already have a strong command of writing that best know how to prompt the generative AI tool. So, one recommendation is to build in opportunities for students to receive feedback not simply from generative AI, but from multiple places, such as through peer review, or the Writing Center, or, of course, yourself, inviting them once again to compare and contrast AI and human feedback to foster not only critical AI literacy, but also greater feedback literacy. And that goes, finally, for any part of the writing process. Pairing AI output with human output can facilitate the important work of critical evaluation that can help students discern where generative AI might be a benefit or a detriment to their own writing process. Whether it's brainstorming or developing theses, summarizing and evaluating sources, drafting, revising, or any other part of the process, ask students to do the work independently from generative AI and then again with its assistance, followed by critical evaluation of it. Doing so cannot guarantee students won't use these tools improperly elsewhere, but it can invite a skeptical attitude and model for them a cautious approach, one that will ideally adopt well beyond the assignment and your classroom. In the next video, we'll take a deeper look at some of the impacts of generative AI on the writing process and consider best practices to support your course learning goals.